We don't have time to try to put Band-Aids on it and prop it up. We've got to do something now. Don't let it fall on deaf ears. When I'm looking at each and every one of you in here tonight, I want you to think about the people that you're listening to on the television. All the candidates that you see, listen to what they're offering. Don't let it be like President Obama with lofty talk about it's going to be better when we get there. We don't know what it's going to be like yet, but when we get there, it'll be better. Listen to what they're saying. Think about what it means to you, what it means to your children. You've got to see that there's got to be a better way. America has always been exceptional. Everything about this country is exceptional. Every individual. You have the right and the power to change what goes on in government. But your power rests in the people that you put up there to represent you. And if those people that are representing you, that you put in place, don't have your ideals, don't have your best interests in mind, do you really think you're going to get what you need or want out of the government? Probably not. When I told you that the FDF was a great organization, it's because I believe that they are trying to educate people. And that's what we need. We need people to get interested in what's going on. Again, you guys are here tonight, so I know that this doesn't apply to you. But most people listen to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Squawk Box, whatever that is. And they listen to these things, and this is where they get their viewpoints. This is what they believe. But they're not telling you everything. They're not telling you anything that hasn't been given to them by one sector of the government or the other. They give you talking points. You've got to educate yourselves. You have to take an interest in your own lives. Take an interest in this next election. Listen to the people that come out in front of you, that are pushing their ideas out there. See if there's any validity to it. See if it holds any weight. If you look at the, and I know you guys have heard it, the 999 plan by Kane. If you guys, how many of you guys support that? How many of you guys like that?
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you, did Kane draft that? And do you know exactly what's in that plan?
No one has looked at the plan in depth, and I'm certain he has a staff working on that.
Kane's plan was actually drafted by a banker.
Down the road,
Art Laffer.
We'll have a chance to do
Art
that
Laffer.
in great detail. I don't know what's in depth. Really don't.
You'll want to educate you. Be educated on it. It was actually drafted by a banker.
Well,
And it was given to him.
Staff.
Right. But it was given to it.
Well, we're going to take a close look at it.
Right.
And develop, and you're right.
Mm-hmm. But what we want to do, what we have to do, is look at who's drafting these plans for these guys. See what's in it. Because if it's beneficial to the bank, because it was drafted by a banker, do you really think he's going, it's like me coming to you saying, well, I'm going to write something for you, a law that restricts me from doing what I want to do, from having my own advantage. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Then if we look at the 59-point plan by Mitt Romney.
Too many points.
Too many points. It's very convoluted. However, if you read it, and I've gone through a bit of what he had in it, and I just got overwhelmed with anger after I read it for a little bit. I saw that it was saying, hey, you know what? What we have to do is we have to we have to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid, go back to the Bush era tax cuts, and that's great. That's great. But what about all those people that are depending on Medicare and Medicaid? I know too many of them. I talked to too many of them. One of the other things that didn't take into account are veterans and the adjusted pay that we need to have for them. I know them firsthand. I'm one of them. I see our service-disabled veterans. Again, I'm one of them. And let me give you one case in point. one gentleman who's asked me to assist with his campaign. He's a disabled veteran. He has, I believe it's stage 4 cancer. His medical benefits from the military and his Medicare will not cover the cost. So he's being turned away. This is a man who actually fought in not one but 2 wars. And he can't get the health care he needs today. That says something about this country. That says something about this nation. I think we really need to rethink, and please, by all means, educate yourselves. Be educated. Everything that I say to you, look into it. Everything that you see on my site, look into it. I welcome any feedback. Anyone that has an issue or thinks that they find something in my plan that discourages them, contact me. Contact me directly. And I address every situation, every question. And I'm happy to do so. The last thing that we need to know is that whoever you elect should not come across as the most powerful man in the country. Your president takes the office of the highest servant of the land. That's what he should see himself as, and that's what you should see him as, a servant of the people. He's got to do the will that you have for him to do, not his own. We should not try to force anything on our people. We're supposed to echo the voice of the people, and that's it. So, I'm going to cut off here. I know I've taken a lot of time, but I appreciate it. My name is Andre Barnett, and I'm running for President of the United States. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
I think you have some questions.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody have it? We'll take a couple now, and then they'll be at the end. Does anyone have a question for him? You can just come up here and ask him. Anyone? Yep.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily have to come up there.
Okay.
But, what about the United States Constitution? Never once have you mentioned it.
That's a good question. I did not.
It
I
is a
try to
very
keep
good
things.
question.
I try to keep things concise. One of the things that I have said, we need to strip government of their bloated powers, strip it back to the framework of the Constitution. Our Constitution works fine. I've heard Obama say, as well as many other elected officials say, we need a new Constitution that actually addresses the issues of today. Our Constitution works fine. It always has, and it will, as long as we do not empower government past their limits. The framework was laid for a reason. We had the 3 branches of government, and they were separated from the states. The states had their own set of powers. We should not allow the government, the federal government, to intercede, or, to overstep their boundaries and begin to interfere with the state's powers. Many of the questions and many of the issues of today have nothing to do with federal powers. I hear about gay marriage. I hear about education. I hear about, healthcare is just another one of those things that the federal government should not be regulating. None of these issues have to do anything with the federal government's powers. The Constitution strictly lays that out for us. So, regarding the Constitution, I support the Constitution at its basic framework.
All right. And yeah, I'll take one more. Go ahead, Mike.
What's your position on national security? Are you for withdrawing out of all the different countries, or projecting power, or what's your position in that in terms of national security?
That's a really good question. National security. There's a lot of things to this, and I'm gonna answer your question, but let me just take another part. Even from the jobs perspective, that's another issue of the national security that I've addressed on a couple of programs and in a couple of interviews. But as far as our troops in foreign countries, the first thing we have to realize is a lot of these countries we don't belong in. We had no stake in the game. The issue that I have with us putting our men and women in harm's way in countries where we don't belong is that it's needless bloodshed. if we look at Libya, we didn't belong there. We don't belong there. We shouldn't have even had anything to say about the NATO's actions there. We shouldn't be taking part with many of the NATO scenarios that take place. But because we have now began to allow ourselves to be really ruled by NATO, or the UN, I should say, excuse me, we're falling into a lot of pitfalls. We have various conflicts in, let's see, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. We're still in Bosnia, in the middle, in the former Yugoslavia, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel for us to come out. If we leave these areas, many of them, they're going to fall right back into civil war. They've been fighting for a long time. We can't stop it, and I don't see why we're trying to force it.
Thank you so much. What we're going to do is I'm going to call Drew Beeman. If we're going to give Andre Barnett a round of applause, and then we'll call him back
Hey, Ayushka, just so everybody knows, we met with Andre a few months ago for several hours, and I wrote up a nice article on, called Meet Andre Barnett, and we'll repost that on the fdfny.org blog, so that if you'd like to get an objective opinion of his policies and whatnot, like I said, I spent hours with him and asking questions, and we'll put that on the
We gave you the
blog.
good and the bad. Not that we slammed him a lot, but there were some things, just so you know. It is objective, is what I'm just trying to say, is that
Right.
we didn't, we met with them and the things that we agreed
Obviously,
with.
check out his website too to learn more,
Yeah.
but
All right, and Drew Beeman, if you want to come up, he's going to give a short presentation, then you can ask some questions.
Hi, my name is Drew Beeman. I'm running for county legislature in the 25th district. Does anyone here know where the 25th is, or do you live in the 25th? Anyone? It's 490 is the northern border, Elmwood Avenue is the southern border, South Avenue in the South Wedge neighborhood is the eastern border, and the western border is Genesee Street. So if you live near any of those areas, Cornhill, South Wedge, then you're in the 25th district. Mr. Barnett was talking at the end of his speech. It kind of set me up for what I was going to talk about a little bit. He mentioned something about the president being the highest office or the highest servant of the people. That's one of the major things I've been talking about in my campaign, because we have a huge divide between our elected officials and the people. And I like to say the people a lot with a capital P, because that is where the power is supposed to be. And unfortunately, our government, like he talked about, has gone way beyond the Constitution, and it's gone way beyond being of the people and for the people and by the people. I think we have a real problem with that, and I think it's not only reflected in certain attitudes. I think a lot of people are getting very tired of career politicians who are sold out to their special interests and tickle people's ears and tell them what they think they want to hear, and then do absolutely nothing for the people. And they do absolutely nothing to empower the people. In fact, they probably do the complete opposite. And that's one of the things I've even found going door to door and meeting the voters in my district, is a lot of people are really frustrated with that, and they see that very clearly. So one of the things I talk about in my campaign is I think that the first thing that we need to do to cut spending is to reduce the salaries of the elected officials. Wow, how am I ever going to get any of the elected officials to get behind that idea? I'm giving that out a lot, I'm talking about that a lot, but people are like, no, it's never going to happen. And they're probably right, it's probably not going to happen, I'll admit that right now. Because nobody is going to vote for that. However, if the people speak up and demand that, then maybe somebody will listen. Maybe not. We'll see. But the issue to me is that we're electing people who are beholden to special interest, who are just they're just puppets of the corporations, like he was talking about. And then, we have things like the LDC scandal that went down, where the deputy executive of the county stepped down and went and worked for the company after he pushed through legislation with no debate, and it was unanimously voted upon. which if I were in office at the time, I would have just in principle voted against it, just to be the one person who didn't take that falling down. I mean, here's the thing, no debate, like where does that come from? Obviously backroom deals, and that's the other kind of thing that people are sick of. They're sick of scandals and backroom deals and things being just breezed right in and then coming back later and finding out, oh boy, this isn't saving the taxpayers, it's actually costing the taxpayers. This kind of thing goes on all the time at every level of government. And part of the reason for that is because we keep electing, sorry, anybody who likes these people, but we keep electing the same two parties into office over and over and over again, and nothing ever changes. Which is why I will not run as a Republican, I will not run as a Democrat. I'm running as the Libertarian Party candidate, because that's what I believe in. And I'm not going to sell out to corporate interests. Some people are afraid, oh, libertarians, they support corporations, blah, blah, blah. And we support a free market like what Mr. Barnett was talking about. That is unregulated, and I think that's one of the things that we need to do to bring jobs to Monroe County, is we need to deregulate as much as we can, make it easy for people to open businesses. We need to bring jobs back. I mean, we got a lot to do at the state level in order to do that, but we need to bring jobs here, and I think the only way we're going to do that is to reduce the tax burden and reduce the regulations on businesses. But back to what I was talking about earlier, I think one of the things that we're finding is that, if you look at the salaries of the elected officials, and you look at their attitudes of entitlement and their bloated egos and their inflated salaries, there's a huge divide between these so-called servants of the people and then the people themselves. Not only in the attitudes, but also in their income. The average citizen in Monroe County, the last statistic I could find, was $23,000 a year is the average, which is a little bit more than I make, actually, I'll admit that publicly. But it's, not very much. Very hard to live on. Why are the servants of the people, our elected officials, making up to 4 to 5 times more than that while the people are suffering? And of course, they're going to vote to give themselves raises whenever they can, and they're going to just keep, the divide is just going to get bigger and bigger unless we can do something about it. So that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about a lot. I'm encouraging people to get out there and vote. Encouraging people to get involved in the process. I'm a preschool teacher, I'm not a career politician, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not some elitist. I'm just a normal guy who makes very little money, but I'm representing the working class in our country, or in our county, and I think that this is something that needs to go across the country. We need representatives in legislatures that represent the working class and represent the people. So some other things that I've been talking about is not seeing the people as ATM machines. We do not need to be nickel and dimed. We are taxed enough. We don't need to be policing in order to raise revenue. There's little tricks that police departments use, and I'm going to talk about the Sheriff's Department right now because that's where my jurisdiction is. I would have no say over the RPD. But police departments use little tactics like red light cameras because they can just mail you a ticket. They don't really have to do anything, which we found is actually increasing rear-end collisions. As well as I've heard a few stories of people getting tickets and they were never even in that neighborhood where the red light could have caught them. So either the technology is really not ready to clearly read license plates, or something else is going on. Not to mention, officers sitting under bridges waiting for speeders. Yes, speeding is a problem. Irresponsible drivers is a problem. Same thing with red lights. But I don't think we need to be policing in order to meet quotas, in order to raise revenue and meet budgetary, needs. There's a line in the budget this year, $620,000 will be raised by the Sheriff's Department through forfeiture. And if you're not familiar with what that is, there was an article, I think it was posted yesterday on Rochester homepage, I think it's Channel 8 News website page and Fox. Where there's a story at the very end, the RPD admit to basically stealing jewelry from drug dealers. I don't know how jewelry has anything to do with the drugs that they're dealing or confiscating or whatever. But they're stealing people's property and using drugs as a reason to go in and do that. Now, I don't think we should be promoting drug use. Drugs are a horrible problem. I think it should be maybe more looked at like a health concern and not so much like a legal matter. Like as a libertarian, of course, I support ending the war on drugs. I'm only talking about marijuana. The county, the Sheriff's Department has been using county resources to go in and bust marijuana growing operations in Henrietta and other people and individuals who were growing maybe a plant or two in their home. And I started to question, why are they using county resources for state law, to enforce a state law? Well, come to find out, they're looking to raise $620,000 this year. in the budget through forfeiture, which is basically theft of people's possessions, whether those possessions had anything to do with the crime or not. And I think that's wrong. All these little ways that the government is nickel and diming us and just using, regulation and policing in order to raise more revenue. I think that's wrong. So as far as a few other little issues, I do support the Second Amendment. I think if you can have a permit, which you go through a rigorous process to get, you can carry walking down the street, walking in front of children playing in their yard. You should be able to carry them in county parks, which the Republicans have backed down on that issue a lot. So I look like my time is about up anyway. So that's all for now. Thank you so much. Any questions? I will take a few questions because I do need to run to another event that I was not invited to, but it's in my district, so I should crash the party.
Okay, how do you feel about the, let's call them roadblock traffic stops, such as the one I went through where the state troopers were at the Browncroft entrance to 490?
Well, I wouldn't have much
Would you say-
jurisdiction over the state troopers. I do think that,
No, but I've seen the sheriff's office doing it too.
yeah, random roadblock stops, I believe, are technically illegal, but you know how they like to fudge things in that department to try to get away with whatever they're trying to get away with. I'm definitely against random, stops like that, random blocks, especially if you notice that sometimes that kind of thing happens in particular neighborhoods. Usually neighborhoods, I'm going to go there, but there's some racial profiling going on in police departments all over the county, and I think that needs to end. And you will see as well, I talk a little bit about the blue light cameras in the city. Now, there's nothing I can do about that as a county legislator. I do want to stop the spread outside of the city into the rest of the county of those, because those are also being targeted in certain neighborhoods, and I don't really think that's very fair to the people that live there. Unfortunately, a lot of people live there do want them and support them and feel safer, so I don't know how far I'm going to go with that issue. But, did that answer your question? And that's all.
Anyone else?
Just like
For Jim?
I can chime in and say roadblocks are illegal. Only if there is a crime taking place, then you can have a roadblock. Outside of that, it is against the law to have a roadblock.
I do know people that fight that in court often win. That's how much I know they do fight that.
Illegal.
To probably just get you for inspection, right?
All right, thank you so much, Drew Beeman, everyone.
Hey, good luck, Drew. Nice meeting you.
Next, we have Rich Tyson. He's running for city council.
Thanks, Aisha. I don't think I'm going to need a microphone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to give you the quick introduction of myself. My name is Rich Tyson. I'm running in the East District for City Council, which is essentially this corner over here and southeast from this point. So it's all the Beechwood neighborhood. It's Cobbs Hill, Northwood Village. It's East Avenue, Park Avenue, down into Swillburg, and in this whole southeast chunk of the city. 29 years old. I just turned 29 about a week ago. And a couple years back, I got out of the military. I was in the United States Navy for 4 years. And when I came home, I was a childlike kid, born and raised. Don't hold it against me. But so I grew up on the west side of the city. When I got back home, I said I wanted to be in the part of the community where things are going on, where the museums are, there's nightlife, there's restaurants and entertainment. So I moved into the city, first into Northwind Village, and then 2 years ago this month, my wife and I bought a home in Cobbs Hill, down on San Gabriel Drive, just off of Highland and Wind Road. And we made the choice to stay in the city because it's the portion of our county and of our community here that really needs the most attention. It's the part that there's the concentrations of poverty. It's where the schools are failing our children and not the other way around. And it's really where we wanted to put our effort. We feel if we're going to be a part of this Monroe County community that we really need to take part in making sure that the entire thing is healthy. So we focused on staying in the city, and that's why I'm running for city council. We've seen about my lifetime of one-party domination and their machine dominating the politics of Rochester, and I think you can see that in a lot of the northeast cities in this country. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Syracuse. It happens all over the place, and I think to some of the reasons that you spoke about when you first got up here, Aisha, as to how that happened and why we're in the position that we're in. And I think that Drew points out, makes a good point, that we do need to have a healthy minority party in the county legislature to hold the Republicans accountable. I'm a Republican. I enjoy having the majority there, but I wouldn't want to see only Republicans at the county level. It's not healthy to have one party. And we need to put a minority party back into the city of Rochester in order to have an opposing point of view, to have some diversity of opinions and ideas, and have that exchange take place in front of people, not just behind closed doors on University at Democratic headquarters, where these things are worked out before they hit the floor for us all to see what's going to pass that night at a city council meeting. So that's the motivation that I bring into running this race. I'm proud to say I've walked all but 3 streets in this district, and that is Park Avenue, just because there's a lot of apartments. I've been trying to get out there, but it's a difficult area. University and Alexander Street. But aside from that, I've walked every street in the Beechwood area, and there's people that are dealing with realities that I would have never guessed. And it really encourages me to keep doing this and to run and win. So the other thing I'd like to bring up too is that as this is a conservative-minded event, I think it's atrocious that we have these red light cameras in the city of Rochester. If the Republicans were in charge of the city of Rochester and we put these red light cameras up, we would see it all over the front page of the DNC and CNN, and everybody would be coming in and saying, look at the racist Republicans, look what they're doing. They're targeting communities of color, because that's the buzzword today, communities of color. I mean, I'm a color too, but apparently not the right color. But they're targeting communities of color and extracting money from the people that least can afford it. These things aren't in Pittsburgh. They're not Henrietta. They're not on the west side. They're in the areas that we have the highest concentrations of poverty and minorities. So I don't know how the Democrats got away with it without anybody freaking out. I know I freaked out a little bit. And I've had people like Jim Lawrence at the Democrat Chronicle tell me it's for safety and that we need to increase safety for communities of color in the city. And I call BS on it because I think it is. But it's atrocious what they're getting away with, and we need to get a minority party into the city, somebody who's outside of the machine that is willing and able to stand up and call follow when it is. And lastly, I'll leave you with this, is, like I said, I'm 29 years old. I want to know that this community is going to foster and nurture the ability for me to personally grow, for my wife and I to grow as a couple, and to hopefully have a family in. We're exporting more people than we are goods and services. People are leaving, and the people that can't afford are the ones that are left struggling to eke out an opportunity for themselves. And unfortunately, we find all too often that opportunity ends up being on the wrong side of the law because they don't see another way out. So I want this community to foster my personal growth and my family's growth, and I want it for all of you guys, and I want for everybody in here who's a parent to not end up being the typical Rochester parent, meaning your kids live someplace else, and you see them at Christmas time and maybe Thanksgiving if you're lucky, because they had to go someplace else to find their own, a place that will facilitate their growth. I think it's government's job to get out of the way and provide a nice foundation for people to build up from. So I'll be happy to take some questions if you've got any, but that's who I am, that's why I'm running, and whether I win or lose this year, you're going to see me again, because I am not sitting down after November 8th this year for sure. But anybody have any questions? Mr. Wright?
What you do different, one thing that is not done now by the current group of people running city council, what's the one thing that you do different?
First of it, I think it's just engaging with people from all backgrounds. Unfortunately, the people that are in charge and in power now only have to go out and talk to you if you have a D next to your name, because if you can't vote for them in their primary, they don't have to listen to you, and they're not. They're not listening to you. If you see my key card that says we're heading in the wrong direction and we're not being listened to, and I'm assuming most people in this room are non-Democrats, I could be wrong, but if you don't have a D next to your name, your opinion doesn't matter in the city of Rochester, because if you're not helping them in the primary, which is where these things are decided, sorry. So that's one thing, is doing what I've done in this campaign and will continue to going forward, is walking these streets. I think it's important for elected officials to get out and knock on doors, even when you're not running a race, to get out and say, hey, here's a report card, how am I doing? What can I do better for you? Back to that servant mentality. So I think it's just really engaging with people from all walks of life and all spectrums, not just the people that I think are going to throw a few dollars to me in the next election, and not just people I think that are going to vote for me in a primary. Any other questions at all? Come on, you got to give me one at least. Another tough question out there.
I know.
This is pretty easy.
Question?
Yeah, the whole issue about the city school district and the mayor taking it over, and, now it's been like bookshelves.
Mm-hmm.
What's, how does city council influence you, being in there, influence
What the
debate on
governance structure looks
education?
like? I think it's a great question. Thanks for asking. It's something, during the mayoral control debate, I was on the board of contributors at the DNC, and when then Mayor Duffy came in and told us that mayoral control was going to be the answer to all of our problems, I said, how? Just tell me how. I'll be happy to support it if it's a great idea, but what is the idea? It was kind of the Nancy Pelosi during the healthcare debate, vote for it and then you're going to see how wonderful it is. I have a better idea. I like to see the product I'm going to purchase before I sign the check. So I think it's seeing what mayoral control is. At the same time, I'm not